Good morning. I'll open up the Kennewick County Human Services Committee meeting and welcome everybody that's here today and appreciate you coming in to share some information with us. Before we go into the general part of our meeting today, we have minutes that were mailed to you if you were able to open them. If not, I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes from the last meeting.
I'll make that motion.
Commissioner Nissen moves. Do I hear a second?
Okay.
Go ahead.
Commissioner Anderson
I'll
seconds.
second it, yeah.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. And then we got bills to pay. You also received those via email.
I'll move to pay the bills.
Commissioner Gardner moves on the bills.
And I'll second.
Commissioner Berg seconds. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. And then we have two warrants to cancel. Also received those, so I'd entertain a motion to cancel the warrants.
I'll make that motion.
Commissioner Anderson moves. Do I hear a second?
I'll second it.
Commissioner Nissen seconds. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right. We're going to start out with the contracts and policy. Deb and Melissa, are you going to join her or is it?
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm Deb Grunwald. I'm a supervisor at Kennewick County Health and Human Services, and thanks for letting us come just for a few minutes this morning to talk about the biennial service agreement. This agreement is a precursor to our joint powers contract that we do every December. And so between DHS, they put together the biennial service agreement. It's a 2-year agreement, and it's between Kennewick County Health and Human Services and DEED, which in our terms is the Wilmer Career Force Center. And so we will be back then in early December to present the joint powers agreement. So this biennial service agreement was sent to you in your box, but we also posted it on our website for public opinion, and we didn't receive any. So we're going to go ahead and present this to the commissioners. This doesn't require a signature at all from the commissioners. It just requires us to do a presentation. And so I'll just briefly go over a few of the highlights of the document from the Human Services side, and then Melissa from the Career Force Center, she'll maybe have a few things to talk about on the things that pertain to their agency. And so as far as, it's a long agreement. It's about an 18, 20-page agreement, but some of the things I'd like to highlight is the collaboration communication that we have between our department and the Career Force Center. Between Melissa and I, we meet monthly, but the job counselors are in contact with our workers daily, weekly, monthly, depending on what needs to be communicated on different cases. That's on page 11, if you wanted to read that over. We do, during our meetings and during our communications, we identify cases that maybe we can help move off of MFIP or that are nearing their 60-month lifetime limit. So those are the things that we kind of concentrate on. On page 12, the Emergency Assistance Crisis Funds, that policy we brought to you about 1.5 years ago. And that has been in place for many years, but we revised it a little bit due to COVID. And so we just put a copy of that in the biennial service agreement because that's listed as some of the funds that we disperse. So any questions on that part so far? Otherwise, I'll introduce Melissa from the Wilmer Career Force Center. All right, thank you.
Thanks, Deb.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Melissa
Good morning.
Ballwarner. How is everyone today?
Well,
It's not bad out.
And for the record, state who you represent.
Melissa Ballwarner, supervisor at Career Force in Wilmer.
Thank you.
So for the contract here, we're very fortunate that Career Force is in the same building for the employment and training for this county. A lot of the counties don't have that option of having their employment and training right in the same building. So if we have any questions, we can literally just go downstairs as well. But what we do, we get the referrals from the county. The individuals on INFIB and DWP are required to come in for their orientation, which is a great policy now that the COVID pandemic waivers have been lifted. So what we do then is we collaboratively with the county and with these households, we develop an employment and training plan to determine what are their needs, what are their barriers to employment, what are some of the services that they might need additional assistance with, and then we monitor their success and their progress with the county as well, just to ensure that they are not only meeting our expectations, but meeting DHS expectations in addition to the county. So are there any questions regarding some of the services that we provide or any of the individuals, any of the needs that we're seeing in the community thus far?
Commissioner Berg.
Good morning. I just want to just make a comment. You said we had a long-term relationship, and we really do have a long-term relationship. It goes back well over 20 years.
Correct.
And it's a fantastic working relationship, and that's one reason it worked out so well is that when the building was built, it was a kind of one-stop shopping type of thing, and people would come here and they get the service, and we can make things more seamless and get people to work if they can.
We extremely appreciate it. So even like with corrections, we can put in their employment plans if they need housing assistance, then we can visit with HRA, or corrections if they're on probation, or any of the expectations that they need that are beyond just employment. You need to really solve some of those barriers before we encourage them to seek employment.
Other questions? Well, thank you very much for coming
Thank
in.
you.
We appreciate the information from both of you.
Enjoy the rest of your meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I would entertain a motion to approve the service agreement between the county and
Do we need
Deed.
a motion? I thought we need a motion.
I'd entertain a motion to approve that contract or agreement.
Also move, but with a question.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, well, let's get the motion and then we'll ask the question. So we have a motion to approve the agreement. Do I hear a second?
I think what the pauses, Chair, Mr. Chair, is it was for presentation only, there's no action
Well,
required.
okay.
Or do you want action?
I think we should still have a motion to accept this as presented, and then we'll come back with the actual the joint powers agreement.
That I will so move.
Okay, thank you. I was a little confused on that myself. Jenny and I conferred and I misunderstood.
I'll second it.
So Commissioner Berg seconds. Any discussion other than that question? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you again.
I can see you thinking.
All right, now on to our general business discussion. Today, we're going to be focusing on community corrections. And Tammy Jo.
Good morning. Tammy Jo
morning.
Lieber, Community Corrections. I have a couple things on the agenda this morning, but I wanted to start with introductions. About a year and a half ago, Nancy Nyokas retired from her office as Deputy Director after serving 31 years. In the year and a half in that meantime, I had Pam Erickson, who also had 30 years' experience. She filled in and was our interim Deputy Director. Because of COVID, we decided to wait a little while and kind of see how things were going. In the last month, we went through a very long process where we had very qualified candidates, all internal, for the deputy director position. We went through an anonymous written exercise, a role play, and a full interview in front of a panel. My staff all did a very excellent job in the interview process, but one person, we had to pick somebody. And so our new deputy director for Candiota High Community Corrections is Crystal Roloffs. And I'll just tell you a little bit about her. She has been a senior agent working at Candiota High Community Corrections since 2001. She started in our intake division with restorative justice and a pretrial caseload. After developing and implementing the driver's license return program, Crystal had gone on to supervise offenders in group supervision, high-risk female offenders, interstate, and supervised release clients. In 2010, Crystal took on the role of evidence-based practices coordinator. She's organized evidence-based training, started and facilitated both Thinking for a Change and Moving On, which you're going to hear a little bit more about today. And she serves as our CSTS voting delegate and statewide supervision agency contract. And those are the computer programs that we depend on every day. Those in CSTS, it's what we have to, everything in our world is in that computer program. Outside of community corrections, Crystal is an active board member at Safe Avenues and the Drug Free Coalition. Her husband, Brett, works for Candido High Community Corrections as well in our community work service crews. Together, they have 2 children, Ty, who's at St. John's University, and Cade, who's at Wilmer Senior High School. So I'd like to introduce Crystal. If you would come up and just say hello. She's going to actually present in a little bit on moving on, but figured at least.
Welcome, Crystal.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
You're free to say a few words if you wish now, or if you want to wait till your presentation, that's fine too.
I'll wait for my
Okay.
presentation.
Put her on the spot.
Thank you.
Okay, so next I have our comprehensive plan that I'd like to present. So there's 3 things on our agenda today. It is can be kind of full, so I do know that if I don't get to justice reinvestment, I will push that one further into the next time we have the opportunity to speak. Our comprehensive plan, as what I'll do is go over an overview over it, and then I do need a motion to accept the signatures for our resolution for the Community Corrections Act subsidy from the Department of Corrections. So the comprehensive plan is we go through several different things, and it's required by statute for community corrections. And as we've talked about, there's 3 delivery systems. We are Community Corrections Act County. Prior to 2021, this comprehensive plan, which is the one we're approving today, is a biannual report to the Department of Corrections that includes information about our CCA subsidy, demographic and offense data information for our county, our strategic plan moving forward, 2% budget training requirements, and a continuous quality improvement plan on how we're going to continue to improve the services we provide. As of 2022, the Department of Corrections, we've been working with the Department of Corrections as an organization with MACAC to change the requirements of the comprehensive plan. So after this year, we actually won't be coming back forward with a full plan for 5 years, even though we've been doing it every 2 years before. We will still have to do an interim plan every year that includes the budget and some basic information, but at least this, the larger plan will only be every 5 years. The other thing that'll change is in past, we've been required to spend 2% of our annual subsidy on training requirements for staff. This is different than the other 3 delivery systems, and so what we're trying to do is make it more consistent across the state. Instead of a 2% training budget requirement, we will go to a 40-hour training requirement. 10 of those hours for each probation officer. 10 of those hours will be required to be on evidence-based practices, very specifically designed in terms of delivery implementation. We also will be working on how our continuous quality assurance plan, how jurisdictions will continue to move forward in providing quality evidence-based practices across the state. So as part of that, I am currently working with Department of Corrections as one of the directors appointed to the Quality Improvement Plan. And then we are also working on how the subsidy will change with the budget information. And so that's one of the things I'll talk to you about justice reinvestment, either today or at our next meeting. So I just wanted to give you a couple of the highlights that we include in our comprehensive plan. You have the full plan that I attached, or that should be in your iCompass. But just a few of the things that we do include is our 10-year statistics that talk about our caseload sizes. Total clients and cases, you can see, are a little bit different. And we show over a 10-year period. Even though some of our caseload numbers have reduced, the types of offenses have increased. So this graph here shows you the types of offenses. When we're talking about misdemeanor, gross misdemeanor, and felony level. And you can see that the biggest increase we are seeing is in felony level offenses, the high-risk offenses that we see in our county. This graph talks about the number of cases we have in a year. So when we talk about our total case number, the one I talked about to begin with, that's how many, it's a snapshot. It's how many cases we have on one given day. We typically pull that at the end of the year or and mid-year to show how many cases we have at midday. But that doesn't tell the whole story, because during the year, we open and close many different cases. So there's also a difference between how many cases and how many individuals.
individuals because clients may have 5 or 6 cases, or they may have just 1 case. So how many of those cases can change? So you can see here, just in 2020, these numbers, that our total supervised was 1,949 adults and 102 juveniles. That's over a period of the whole year. So we may have opened and closed different cases. It's quite a few different cases considering how many probation officers I have, which averages about 84 individuals per probation officer that they supervise during the year. Again, level of supervision and types of intervention are determined. So how often we see somebody, what we do with the person is determined by the risk level that we use our risk assessments, the level of offense, and the type of the offense. So we're going to be supervising somebody with a misdemeanor or gross misdemeanor DUI at a different level typically than somebody who's a high-risk sex offender. We use risk assessments to determine that as well, not just by the type of offense, and make sure that we can provide the services to address community safety. Some of the other demographics that we look at that I pulled out for a highlight is the idea that, or it talks about clients by race. As you can see, the majority of the individuals we supervise at Candy Ohio Community Corrections are Caucasian. And then the quality improvement plan. What that really is a roadmap on evidence-based practices for community corrections, implementing that process across the board. So we've succeeded in implementing through phase 1, which includes making sure that all of our new agents are trained in evidence-based practices, which includes motivational interviewing, risk assessments, case planning, cognitive skills, and effective alliance. We also provide booster sessions to all staff and continue to develop how we're going to implement those processes. Quality improvement phase 2 is what we're currently working on. This is a process that's been ongoing for many, many years in our department. Right now, we're looking at how do we develop a coaching process and train our supervisors or career agents in a way that can help provide that extra level of supervision and training for our new staff, especially for departments like ours where we have a great number of quality staff that have been here for 20-plus years. But as we're starting to see the retirements, we're having more new staff, and we need to make sure that we are ready to provide that training and supervision process. Part of that is doing case audits or case reviews, making sure that we're seeing our clients as often as we need to be, and really utilizing the evidence-based practices when we're meeting with them, using direct interaction and implementing cognitive programs on our one-on-one and in a group setting. Part of that is also in our CSTS program, the computer program, making sure we document those contacts and utilize what we call a smart chrono, which provides that information. And hopefully we're able to then bring that information back at a later date and tell you how many different types of interactions we've had. So those are some of the things that we're working on as part of the quality improvement plan. So the last part about the comprehensive plan is the budget. The resolution that I have in front of you and that I'm going to hand to you, it talks about our CCA subsidy, which has increased this year to $810,398. That is a pretty small portion of our budget, but it does provide us with the ability to provide services in the community. As we're going on justice reinvestment, and some of the things that we've been working on at the state level have included information on how do we increase that state funding option for our community. Because it is a requirement of the state, they are supposed to provide the services for felony supervision, for supervised release or parole cases coming out, and also some subsidies for gross misdemeanors and juvenile supervision. So this is part of what justice reinvestment is some of the things that I'm working on at the state level to how do we provide that services back or the funding back to our county through the CCA subsidy. This resolution just is providing that we're accepting the funds from the state this year.
So I would entertain a motion to accept resolution 2021-.
I will make that motion.
Commissioner Nissen moves on the resolution.
No, I'll second that.
Commissioner Anderson seconds. Do I hear any discussion or questions? Seeing and hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you.
So does anybody have any questions about our comprehensive plan before we move on? And I'm saying moving on, and that's actually the next presentation. So moving on is a cognitive behavioral group program that our staff have implemented with high-risk female offenders. I'm going to let them come up and tell you all about the program a little bit, and we'll go from there. So Crystal and Raylan.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
Crystal Roloffs with Kansas County Community Corrections and the new deputy director. And thank you for the welcome. I appreciate it.
You want to, excuse me, Crystal, you want to pull your mic up just a little bit?
I will, thank you.
Thank you.
For some reason, the PowerPoint is not showing up.
I switched it over and it's not. It's on our computer, but not on, there we
There it
go.
is.
Got it.
Okay.
This is what to test your patience.
So as Tammy mentioned in my introduction, I have been working with evidence-based practices since 2010. And originally, we started with the Thinking for a Change program, which was developed by the National Institute of Corrections. And it focuses on social skills, problem solving, and recognizing risk and thinking. And so as we continued with that programming, more studies came in that said that targeting women or high-risk females, they get into the criminal justice system in a different way than our men. And so that the COG skills programming started to evolve. And so thus, moving on was developed. And so I'll just get to the next screen here. So moving on is our gender-specific, it's not coming up there.
Might be just slow.
I don't know if you can see it on your screen.
We do.
See it?
Well, we have it on our
No, it's not up there.
Right, but the public can't, wouldn't be able to see it if you don't change it.
But it's not changing.
But they do have it, the commissioners have it. So if you want to,
I'll just continue, and then when it catches up, it catches up. So moving on is our gender-specific COG program. It's only for women. It recognizes that women enter the criminal justice system for different reasons other than men. Women are very relationship-based. Most of the time, their involvement is because of a relationship, and that's what the studies have shown. So the program builds on participants' positive traits. We work on finding strengths. We work to create a supportive environment that helps them explore their hopes and goals for their future. You'll see that in the curriculum coming up. We introduce strategies and skills that help them regulate their emotions and manage their feelings. And then we work with connecting with the women, building relationships with us as contacts, but then we also work to connect them to resources in the community so they feel like they're part of the community instead of standing on the outside. So the general themes of our program of moving on is that we want to encourage that their personal responsibility in their actions and what they have control over. We want to enhance their motivation to change and keep taking control of that. We want to expand their connections in the community and with us and build healthy relationships, setting boundaries. We work on that social skills enhancement and development. And then we also, this program adds in a piece that's relaxing and stress management. So how do you take time for yourself? So we pull some pieces from their chemical dependency treatment or different outside sources and help them become hopefully well-rounded. And what we find too is that this translates down to their children and to the next generation, and that'll be a reoccurring theme too. So our guiding principles, building relationship. We want it to be strength-based. The curriculum is also trauma-informed, which is a big buzzword, but it's also taking into account that these women bring a lot to the table. They've been through a lot, they've seen a lot. We want to build their supports. Again, we start with ourselves and then branch out into the communities. We want to enhance their motivation to take control instead of being controlled. We respect everybody's differences. Everybody comes to the table from all different walks of life, and we are respectful of that. We create frameworks for working with services in the community. We are rich in services in Kansas County. We are so fortunate. We collaborate with the clients to help them make plans moving forward. And then we also have evaluation. So this builds in a pre-test, where are they at with their trauma and their skills before, and then what is at the end? What are they gaining through the program? And then it builds into how do we put that into their individual appointments going forward with their agents. So it's ongoing. So another piece that is attractive and moving on is that it's open-ended. So every module, we can keep adding clients. So as they graduate, we always have people coming in. Whereas thinking for a change, you did 25 sessions, you'd start with 10, you'd maybe have 5 that made it to the end. Moving on, we have we have 6 modules, and every time we get to a module, we have an opportunity to introduce a new member to the group. So it's always ongoing. The only module that we don't introduce new clients to is module 3, because that really focuses on domestic violence. And at that point, we need to have the relationships to get through a lot of that curriculum. So module 1, we start out with those pre-assessments. Where are they at? What are they bringing to the table? We do an orientation, which helps them make their vision for success. They make posters. A lot of our women are very visual learners, visual communicators, and so for them to put a poster and have a visual of what they want in family and community and for themselves is really big. When we jump into module 2, we look at the social skills. How do you actively listen and advocate for yourself? How do you express your wants and needs? How do you say no? How do you take the sting out of criticism? How do you accept that and not have it be who you are? And then negotiating. And then, like I said, module 3 is building relationships. We have incorporated safe avenues with this. Sometimes we have an advocate on hand, and it just really introduces them to services if they ever need them in the future, or if they know somebody who does need them. We work on what is a healthy relationship? What do I want in a relationship? What can I do without? We look at what is a relationship bill of rights? What do you have a right to? How do you make a decision to leave, or how do you help somebody make a decision to leave if you know someone? And then what is a friendship? What do I bring to a friendship? All really important things. The next module is expressing your emotions. A lot of people or a lot of women that we get are very good at taking care of everyone else. But how do you have a feeling and accept a feeling? How do you react to the outside world and coming to you? How do you listen to what your mind is telling you and make that work? How do you challenge harmful self-talk, and how do you celebrate an emotion? So again, you can see through the curriculum, it's very relationship-based. And then the last module is challenging common myths and stereotypes. We look at what the media tells women that they should be versus what they want to be. We explore ways for them to be happier and healthier. We talk about drug use. We talk about how that affects family, how that affects their kids. We talk about family. Sometimes family isn't your blood relatives, right? Sometimes family is who you put around you that support you and that pick you up and that you can depend on. What are your family challenges? How do you set boundaries that are healthy? Your career. We've had women that we take out to the college. How do we just start with getting our education? How do we start with getting on track with college that we always wanted to do? We meet with a counselor with them. And then the last part is all about me and what we do to help them plan for those next steps into the future. And then we graduate. And graduate is not the end. Graduate is just the beginning of taking those plans, and then we keep working with them individually in appointments. But we make graduation a very special time for them. They get a hat, not a hat and gown, a hat. We play pomp and circumstance. We have them walk. We have them present their assignments that they've been proud of, that they've put together. And then each facilitator puts together where have we seen their greatest change from where they started to the end. We identify what strengths we see in the person, what challenges to keep working on and the success they had working on them, and then what strategies we see for their success that they get to keep. And so this is just a really big piece of empowering them to take what they've learned and keep growing with it. And Raylyn is going to share, she's a facilitator with me, and she's going to share her experience with the women and what she's seen with the program.
Raylan Brace from Community Corrections. I actually started moving on at my internship at the Minnesota Correctional Facility in Shakopee. So I've had the opportunity to facilitate in the prison with women who have been incarcerated for long periods of time to just short periods of time and who are ready to be released. And then coming here, I'm able to work with the women in the community, which is a lot of fun because, like Crystal said, we are very rich with resources, and we get to kind of incorporate everything in the progress with the women. Some of my experiences, I'm just going to talk about some of the experiences with the women and in my short time here. One of my favorite ones, we've got a woman in our class right now who is just recognizing her own feelings and understanding that she has feelings and she has emotions. And she's kind of confused right now at what all these feelings are. Usually some of the women will mask their feelings with anger, and they'll be quick to act in conflict or the fight, not the flight response. And she talks about how, oh, now that I have feelings, I got to think this through a little bit more. Or now that I have feelings, you're saying other people have feelings, so what I do affects them. So she's recognizing her behaviors and her actions and how they're affecting other people, and how she can rebuild the relationships or how she can move forward and improve her life and improve her choices. Like Crystal said, they begin to take ownership and they recognize how they're affecting themselves, their life, their kids, the rest of their family, their friends, the community, the people that they work with, the professionals they work with. When we go through the skill practice in the classes, sometimes we send the women out to their real lives and say, practice these skills with people in your family or your friends or just other people in the community. And then we come back and talk about it and how it went for them and how they used that skill, if they were successful, if they weren't successful. And then we bring all the other women together and we give feedback to each other. Hey, that didn't work for you in this situation. This worked for me. Maybe you could try that next time. So they're able to bounce ideas off of each other, and we're able to just kind of listen at that point. They kind of do the work themselves. And they recognize that they're not alone in their situation or these new situations that they have coming where they are being successful or they are getting things accomplished. It's uncomfortable for them. They haven't experienced that before. So they get to share that experience with the other women in the group, especially when we come to graduation. It is really cool when the women spread out all of their stuff, and it fills an entire picnic table, all of their assignments, all of their projects. They come up and say, this assignment was not really good, but this assignment, I learned so much, and this is how much I've grown. So they really get to recognize their progress, and it's kind of fun for us as facilitators to see how much they've grown and how much they recognize that they've grown, and just to see how proud of themselves they are. So do you have any questions?
Yeah, I think there'll be several. I saw Mr. Gardner's hand go up first.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you so much for the report on this. I either didn't hear or didn't understand what you meant when you say that the program recognizes that women enter the criminal justice system for different reasons than men. Could you expand on that just a little bit, and especially how that informs what you're doing then within this program?
So men enter the criminal justice system on average, just it's a happenstance, it's a choice. Women enter the criminal justice system mainly because of the relationships that they're in. They want to gain an approval, or they don't know any different from what they've learned. Women are getting into the criminal justice system mainly because of the relationships. They're different aspects of it. I hope I'm
For example?
explaining that. For example, one of the women that we had come through ended up with strings of burglaries because she was with men that were committing the burglaries. She wasn't the primary person, but she was guilty of the offenses because she was involved with it. She wouldn't have set out to do the burglaries, she just happened to be there. And so that's kind of examples of even drug use or domestic violence or different things. They happen to be involved or they happen to be there, but they wouldn't have set out to primarily do the crime in many cases.
Okay. And then that informs the program, the programming that you do in what way?
So if we target the relationships and we target healthy boundaries and help them build confidence to make choices, the hope would be in the future they would choose not to be in those situations, not to be in those relationships, and they would teach those values to their children.
So this is still about accountability, but being able to give them some tools to make different decisions going forward.
Exactly. We want them to be able to own their actions, but we also want them to be able to take responsibility of their life and be able to make different choices in the future and not just be products of their environment.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Commissioner Nissen.
I just had a question about, you spend 50 hours with these folks and then they graduate. What happens then? Is there a follow-up? Are they still on probation? Or how do you keep track of whether or not you were successful?
Very good question. This curriculum allows us to take those skills and keep working one-on-one in our individual probation appointments with the clients. And so it's an ongoing. Once we are reassessing them at a lower level and they're halfway through their supervision, we use success or graduation as an argument for early discharge from probation. Since we've started in 2019, and mind you, we have had COVID and we were in person and we've transitioned into Zoom. We've had 9 graduates. We currently have 5 in the program now, and we've only had 1 reoffend. So it's short term. We have to keep watching it, but it is having an impact.
A follow-up, how do you select the students?
That's a really good question too. So our risk assessments, so we've talked about how we use those risk assessments to target and use our resources. So the women that are qualified or that fill into the referral for this program would be those that score high or medium on our risk assessments. So it's very rare that we would put a low risk offender in here just because of the intensity of the program. But if we have a low risk offender that's sitting on the high of the low scoring that would have a lot of needs, we could override and do that too. But mainly we work on medium and high risk offenders.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Berg.
Kind of a follow-up on those questions. Do you have any or very many that don't graduate once they get into the program?
We do have some that have not been able to complete the programming. With COG programming, there are studies that show that if we can get them through 1, 2, 3, 4 sessions, we still have an impact on recidivism. So even if we get them through part of it, but not all, we still could have an impact. And we do offer it to women, once they're done with that jail time or once they're done with the sanction, to start over. So it's not like it's a no forever, it's just a no for now. And then we hope that we can keep, plugging in the skills and having those impacts.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Other questions? Tell us again, how long has the program been around? When was it started?
We started using this curriculum in 2019.
So just 2 years ago, right
Yeah.
before COVID. Okay, thank you.
And then there was a little break with COVID in there. We had to figure out how to revamp it and teach it because you're going from a classroom setting and curriculum with classroom setting and modifying it to Zoom. It's a little challenge, but we have figured it out.
Thank you. And then it seems like the services you provide for the clients are fairly effective and well used. So once the probation is over, are you still available as a resource to them? Because just because they've completed their probation or parole, whatever the case is, and they've gone through the moving on program, doesn't mean everything in their life has suddenly become rosy. So are you still available? Or are we able to provide that resource once the probation is over?
Absolutely. That is part of developing that relationship and being involved in our community. I have had people that I've had on supervision that still come back and ask if they have issues that go on. And that's what we're trying to create is how do we build a community, and we are always going to be a resource. And I believe that all these graduates, they would come back in a heartbeat if they had anything with their kids or anything. They just are very, they see probation in a different light. They see us as a resource instead of a punishment. And so I think to answer your question, I do believe they will, yeah.
So, which begs the question, that if this continues to be successful down the road, will we have the resources when there's 30 and 40 graduates? And would those graduates themselves be a resource for future clients?
Good question.
That would be the hope, is that they can come back and they can, help advocate for others, and they can come and explain to you their experience and where they're at now. That's part of what we're building into our planning. When you're saying that you're having 30 people or 40 people come back, when people come back to us, a lot of times it's connecting the dots. It's it's explaining to them, what community resources you have available and how do we connect them to their community? Because we do have so many resources available. So it's not ongoing, yes, we're there for support, but we turn into more of a connector. So I think it is very manageable to help connecting them and to help hearing them out and being a resource, but not being the only resource.
Thank you. Other questions or comments? Well, we'd like to thank you guys for coming in today and for the informative presentation.
Thank you.
Keep up the good work.
Thank you.
So we have about 8 minutes. I can talk about justice reinvestment for a little bit, if we want to go back to that and see if I can get this PowerPoint to work. So now I can't see. Interesting. I got it up there, but I didn't get it on here.
Technology.
I know. Okay, so justice reinvestment. What we're talking about with justice reinvestment, we have been trying to implement in the state of Minnesota for probably a little over 10 years. It's part of a process to really look at how we're investing our resources in corrections. And it's a statewide approach that we have started this, we've been working on trying to implement it in Minnesota, but now we're able to actually bring it into where we're at. He's messing with my computer over here, so now it's catching my attention. So it's a data-driven approach to public safety, to reduce corrections-related criminal justice spending and reinvest the savings and strategies that can decrease crime and reduce recidivism. Really what we're looking at is, even though Minnesota, and I'll show you some of the numbers as I go forward, but in Minnesota we have one of the lowest incarceration rates across the country. But that being said, it's also one of our biggest bills. We spend an enormous amount of money on incarcerating individuals at the prison. Not only is it very costly to have people in the prison, it also isn't really very effective. It's necessary. We have individuals who are not ready to make changes and that they still pose a risk to the public safety. And so we have to have a prison, we're never going to get rid of prisons in the United States or in the world, right? There's always going to be a purpose for them. But when we're looking at how we can best reduce recidivism, prisons are the most costly, but they're also the least effective because we're not providing those services like we just heard about with moving on and connecting people back into the communities. So this justice reinvestment, it comes from State Council of Governments, really comes in and does a deep dive into our research, into what we're doing as a state. For us right now, they're looking at all three delivery systems, the county corrections, the Department of Corrections, and our community corrections. And really looking at how can we reinvest those dollars by reducing the number of people going to prison and reinvest them back in our communities. So how we do that over the next year, we actually are required, I'm part of the committee, and we're required as part of the legislature to provide a summary in January of this year, or February, I think it got moved back to the legislature. So, just wanted to talk a little bit about some of the things Justice Reinvestment is doing. Sentences to probation make up 3/4 of all felony sentences in Minnesota. So when we're talking about corrections, people under some type of correctional control, 3/4 of them are in our communities, not in the prison system or in the jails. And we're providing that type of supervision in the community in some fashion, either through one of the delivery systems. When we look at that also, and you've heard me say that community corrections, our CCA partners across the state, actually supervise 76% of those individuals in the community. And then our county probation officers supervise another 13%. So when we look at this, the Department of Corrections actually supervises a very small number of individuals across the state in the community. So how we make that funding switch of understanding where the funding is coming from the state to bringing it back into our communities is really important. That system was designed in 1976, but right now it's really not providing the funding back to the communities like we're supposed to. So over 80% of adults on probation are supervised by local agencies, like I said. And you can see in this graph that if we look at total adult populations, which is 85,000 individuals, 71% are on CCA, 11% and 18%. So overall, of a total population, that's where we're looking at. And when we talk about felony, because county probation officers do not supervise felony offenders, we're looking at it a little differently, the 73% and 27%. We are unique, by the way. Minnesota is the only state in the country that has 3 separate delivery systems. There's several other states that have multiple 2 delivery systems, but we're the only one with 3. So Minnesota's rate of people under correctional control is 11th highest amongst the states in 2019. So we look at this, if you look at this graph, it shows that for the probation rate, we have the highest number, one of the highest numbers of people under probation supervision, one of the lowest incarceration rates, but then again, under total correctional control, the idea that when you lump both probation, jail, and prison in, we're 11th in highest correctional control. So what does that mean? What are we doing as part of this committee? We're working with the Council of State Governments. They're analyzing our data across the state. They're meeting with different community corrections, Department of Corrections agencies, and county probation agencies. As part of their request, we have specific challenges and things that we're supposed to be addressing and analyzing and going over. We're reviewing community corrections spending, how those dollars that I talked about are being spent, and how they're being divided between each of the agencies, because there is a significant disproportionality in terms across the state that what delivery system you have right now depends on how much the state is funding. And different counties have chosen they want that spending to be higher so that they can provide better services to their communities, like Candy, Ohio. But how do we make that equitable across the state? So it doesn't matter what county you're in, the state is still going to provide funding for that correctional supervision that it's required as part of statute to provide. They're analyzing the population, they're analyzing how we can make sustainability and make sure that we provide good quality, evidence-based services across the state, no matter what your delivery system you choose to be in, and how we can equitably distribute that. Part of that is right now we're looking at the Oregon system of community corrections, but there's other places across the country that we're looking at to see where we can provide that services. So House File 63 charges the work group that I'm assigned to describe how the state and counties can achieve an effective supervision system together, balancing local control with state support and collaboration. Providing sustainable funding, a funding model that provides that associated costs back to the counties, and how we provide the evidence-based services back. We're also looking at what a definition of core standards in probation and community supervision should look like. The reason behind that is if the state should provide that core funding and then different counties choose to invest at a higher level, that's where the counties choose to be, but the state still has that obligation to provide at least the level of funding to provide the core services. And as of right now, we're not seeing that funding on core services. And then the third part of this is they're also exploring options for tribal government and how they can provide community corrections at a tribal level. Won't necessarily affect us as much, but just it's one part of that House file as going forward. So takeaways, the Council of State Governments is looking at, although Minnesota has a low incarceration rate and a high probation rate, Minnesota's rate of people under correctional control is 11th, according to Across the Way. Sentences to probation make up 3/4 of all felony sentences. We have more people under probation than we do in the prison system or incarcerated in our jails. Despite the state's commitment to avoiding county costly incarceration, they have not fulfilled their obligation in county spending or in community corrections. We do see a disproportionate number of people of color in our correctional system, and that's something else that we're trying to find ways to address. 80% of all adults on probation are supervised by local agencies, and correction spending has increased. And the state has, but during that increasing spending, it has prioritized correctional spending at the prison level. We are putting a lot of time and energy into improving delivery systems and funding approaches, and hopefully this will help us provide that overall going forward, how we're going to make it. So really, in reality, what we're looking at is our corrections funding system may look completely different in 2 years. So hopefully we'll see some improvements in the state funding.
Hopefully, yeah.
Thank you. We have time for one or two quick questions, if there are any questions.
Is there a moving on program for men?
Going back to the Moving On program, actually we use Thinking for a Change, which does look at, it's the same basis of cognitive behavioral treatment interventions, but it doesn't go into the relationship piece of it. So right now we're using Thinking for a Change, but actually that's another cooperative agreement we're looking at in the next couple weeks of actually implementing a new program called Decision Points. We're joining actually with some of our area counties and bringing a trainer in to use decision points because, as you heard Crystal talk about, moving on allows you to join at different stages. One of the complicated processes we have with Thinking for a Change is when you go over 25 weeks and you can't start new people, it doesn't really give us, it really limits how many people we can get through the program. Whereas Decision Points is more open-ended and we can have people start at different stages of the process, so it's not just 25 weeks, we have these individuals, and then 25 weeks. So we're looking at we have a program for men, but we're looking at other programs as well.
Thank you. With that, I will adjourn the Kaneohe County Health and Human Services Committee.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tim.